So, hey, today I'll be doing entity or object import from one level to another, specifically from a Crash 2 level to a Crash 2 level, and that's it. So, first off, you need to make sure then you can actually import the object with all the textures and load them. So, Crash 2 or Crash 3 or Crash 1 can only load 8 texture chunks at once, and you always load these two because they are used for crash and crates and the pause menu and stuff like that, and the specific levels use specific amounts of texture chunks in specific areas. So for example, when I'm at the very beginning of Cold Hard Crash, I can just go through the load list to figure out how many textures are actually loaded. Now all the uh, textures names end with a T, so it's just to signalize that it's a texture just like all zones names end with a Z and all SLSTs names end with an S. So you can just always look at the last character of each item. So I get 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Plus these two ones that are always loaded, which are also in this list, but I just skipped over them. That means that in this area I cannot load any more textures, so I'll have to place it somewhere where this area's textures are loaded. Specifically, the Warp 4 textures are used for for the for the spawn area, for the spawn corridor and stuff like that. So I'll have to start using the imported enemy in like somewhere around here. If I don't use them here, uh, it just won't work because the game will not be able to load the correct texture, so it will just look bad. Now I've got my spawn point set up here. I've removed the I haven't. No, I'm pretty sure I have. Yeah, I have removed uh the invisible wall I added before, and I'll just be adding the enemy somewhere here, so I'm sure that I can actually load the textures here. So the way enemies work is each enemy uh, is made up of models, animations, sounds, and the code that actually makes them do stuff they do. So for example, all the code entries are called T11 because it's type 11, and what I'm looking for is so third C, as the name suggests, is a T11 or a code entry that controls the turtle's behavior, and this item is just some header item. This is the actual code. Here are some constants, which are usually the sounds. So you'll have to make sure that all of these sounds are actually in this level because the code makes sure that these sounds get played, and if these sounds are not present in your level, it will crash because it will still try to find them and it will not find them. This is just a list of events which you don't really need to have any uh, any work with, and here are references to the code. which you don't also need to do anything with. And here is a list of animations that you will need. So this item basically tells the game what animations to spawn the objects with, or what the animations the object will have. So the turtles, or at least some of them, will have these animations. So it's this. So this is a model. So one of them is these. One of them is this. Another one, and this. So you need to have these in this level. This level will not have them unless it already uses them, which it doesn't really, because why would it be there already? And you also need to make sure that the textures of these are also there, because you can see here that this is not what the enemy looks like in the game, and that's because this doesn't have the textures yet. And to figure out what textures this enemy uses, you have to unprocess the model, and here you can see the references to the textures. Oops. So here you can see that the turtle enemy, or at least this animation, uses a Django 5 texture. Oh, this is an elevator. I really need elevators. What I meant to check is this. So it seems like the turtle enemy only uses the Django 5 or GU5 texture chunk. So what I want to do is just export it in raw hex format, save it somewhere, Django 5, and open your level, the .nsf file, and the uh, exported texture. And you basically just want to select the entire texture chunk and just paste it at the end. Now you can do it because the texture chunk is an entire chunk, and that's the chunks are what the individual levels are made up of. So you've got a level that's 5000 kilobytes big, and it's divided into 64 kilobyte chunks in which the individual entries are stored, but textures are entries, but they are also chunks. So one texture is as big as one chunk and also kind of behaves like a chunk. So you just grab the entire texture chunk and copy paste it into the file. Now it's gonna be at the end, so it's here. I need to make sure that the .nsf file has this texture chunk in it, and now I'll need for the enemy I'll need the code entry, the T11, and everything it references that's not in this level yet. So what I do, I put everything about the enemy in one chunk, because it's way better than having it spread all across the level. Because now when I load the enemy, it's gonna only take one chunk to load the entire enemy. So what I need is these sounds. Now I know that this sound is not in in Cold Hard Crash. This one is not in Cold Hard Crash either. This one is in every level, this one is in every level, and this isn't a sound, it's just uh, some other, it's just some raw hex data, it's not a reference to a sound. Neither is this, pretty sure. Yeah, it's not. So I've got the sounds, and what I need are the animations and the models. So I'll just search for this. And basically just export it, and then I'll import it into my level. Seems to be all I need, so I'm just gonna import it one by one. So if I didn't have this here, it wouldn't work because the animation needs the model. And if I didn't have this entry here, there wouldn't be anything that would use this animation and this model. It would just be present in the level, but no object would use it. I'm pretty sure I don't have this. Now, the order of the entries that you import doesn't really matter. I just tend to have it in sort of alphabetical order. Okay, so I've got all of these here. I need to make sure that I also have the sounds, so I'm just gonna import them. So there's this sound and this sound, and that should be it. Yeah, these two are already here. Yeah, I need to have these in the NSD, otherwise the game wouldn't know how to load them. So I'll go ahead and go to the area where I spawn and just make sure that they are actually loaded. So I need to make sure that the texture chunk is loaded, and this chunk that contains all data about the turtles has to also be loaded. All I need to load is one entry and the entire chunk will be loaded. Now I don't have to load this sound chunk because it's already loaded, because the game uses this sound and this sound and this sound and this sound all the time. Basically all four sound chunks are loaded already, so I don't have to concern myself, or you don't have to concern yourself with it. So I'll just go ahead and load these. in in the area where I'm gonna be using the enemy. Oops, I don't want this. I want channel 5 BT. The way I figure out what code entry the turtles use is kind of simple. The T11 or the code entry as name will probably have a name similar to the objects it has. So, for example, uh, Fruity is responsible for fruit and collectibles like that. Armasi is used for armadillos. Genosea is just for used for jungle objects such as the swallops, the birds, and the butterflies. We'll see is for Wheelie, which is for Crash. So this code entry is responsible for the player object. Box C is used for boxes. Shadow C is used for shadow. Light C, I don't know what light C. Oh, it's used for lightning. Some sort of lightning somewhere or lighting. Doctor C is used for the mask. Disp C is for the display, the head over display, and mm, the pause menu. Part C is used for particles. So when you look at the name, you already kind of know what kind of objects the code entry is used for. So third C is used for turtles. I also need to load it. I'll just go ahead and load it in this area, and I'll use it here. Now this is the annoying part because you have to ensure that you load everything you need wherever you need it, and you kind of have to do it all manually. Okay, so this doesn't have. Okay, so now I have all the data loaded in the area. I have all the data present in the level, but I still don't know how to place the object. So let me open this level's NSD. The NSD file contains some data about the level that has to be loaded all the time. These 400 bytes here are used for, I don't know what for, but this is the chunk count. This is the entry count. This is some constant word, but here is the entry table, which is not interesting now. But here, down here, these 100 bytes, hex 100 bytes, so it's 256 bytes, is a list of the code entries which are used in the level. And when you look at, for example, a box, a crate, it has type 34, and if I went to the 34th item in this list, so that's I'm here. This is the it's in this index from 0. So this is the 0th item first. This is the second. This is 6th, 10th, uh, 14th, 18th, 22nd, 26th, 30th, 24th. And when I go ahead and find the box C, T11, it's got this code. So that means that box C is on the 34th slot in the T11 list, and therefore any crate will have type 34. So I need to make sure that my imported T11 is in this list. And what I do is I always put it on some unused slot. So all slots that are 7F34, 96, TC3 are unused. It literally says, when it's transcribed, it says none. It says nothing is used here. So I can use all the slots that are not used, and my slot is on it has got index 63 because this is 256. This is 256 bytes, and each 4 bytes are one item. Fuck. So I've got 64 items here, and they are indexed from 0. So this is 0th, first, second, and so on and so on. And this is the 63rd item. So my item will have type 63. Okay, first I need to actually have some entities here that I'm gonna draw. So this is a turtle. It's got type 63 because I made it so it has type 63, and it's gonna be somewhere here. Whatever, I don't really care about the placement now. But the subtype and the settings are constant, so, or at least don't change when you import the enemy. So I'll just look for an enemy and just use the subtype and the settings it uses. So some of this is speed. I don't know which one means right now. So I'll just copy it over so that it behaves sort of as it should. Okay, so I've got it here. Now I need to make sure that it's actually drawn. So okay, now it's drawn is when the camera is on this path, and I'll just put it here as well. And oh yeah, I haven't saved it. Okay, now it's good. Now it should work. Let me make sure. Okay, spawn there. So now the enemy should be there because it's drawn, it's loaded, all the data is there, all the data is in the NSD, and the sounds are also there, and also the textures are loaded, and I am not loading 9 textures. So these are the conditions uh, for entity import or enemy import, object import, whatever you want to call it. What have I done? I have messed up something. I saw it there. Oh, yeah. There's one more zone where I haven't drawn it. So now it should be good. The turtle enemy is sort of simple because it doesn't have any specific death animation for you that you would have to care about. If you had some specific death animation, you would have to do much more work because you would have to make sure that the death animation is in the level, the sound it makes is in the level, that it's loaded when you need it, that it's in the T11 references, and all sort of funny stuff. So this enemy is one of the simplest to import. Other enemies tend to use more textures than one. For example, what uses a lot of textures? Now I can't think of any, but many enemies use more than one. They use 2, they use 3, they use 4, and those are really hard to port to other levels because you rarely have areas that don't already use 7 or 8 or 6 texture chunks. So for example, let me open Digging. So this is a Tiki statue, and when you open the model, you'll see that it uses 4 textures. So there's no way I would be able to use it in Cold Hard Crash ever because it usually loads 2 base textures. It also loads 4 or 5 or 6 level specific textures for snow levels, and there's nowhere where I could load these without going over the texture limit, which is 8. Then there are some objects that don't always work because they are to specific extent bound to the ID of the level. So, for example, what's bound by ID? For example, secret warps. You cannot use secret warps everywhere. If you were to use secret warp in Cold Hard Crash, it would just default to the normal exit, and that is because somewhere in the T11 there is some value that is set to a specific level's ID that you would have to change to your level's ID to make it work. Also, some objects spawn other objects. So, for example, in Dignit, when you've got the evil plant, uh, it is divided into several objects. One is the plant itself, then it's the spiky base it has around itself, and then there's the bomb that it shoots, which is just a texture on a flat polygon. So if you were to export that, you would also have to make sure that your that uh, the T11 that you're importing has the same type as is on the same slot as it was in the level that you exported it from, because the T11 that spawns these uh, does it the way it has a command that basically just says spawn uh, an object of this type, and when it does it and you have the these enemies bound to some different type, it will not spawn your things because uh, so let's say this is on type 50 and you put it on type 63, and this T11 has somewhere in it that says spawn object 50, specifically object 50, uh, and it will fail. It will just not spawn it. It will not spawn the base around the plant, and it will not spawn this bomb because uh, it's not on type 50 anymore. It's on type 63. So you would either have to change the code, which is really annoying and really tedious, and I don't really know it like from heart. Like, it's not like I could go here and look it up. I would have to first like look up how to do it. Or you just use the type it used before. So if it has type 38, you would also use type 38 in your level, because otherwise you wouldn't get it working. So that's pretty much it. Let's sum it up. First, what I did is I found out what T11 the enemy is spawned by. Then I found out what sounds. Shit. I found out what sounds the. Come on. What sounds the T11 uses that I don't have in the level yet, which were these two. Then I went ahead and found out what animations I need, which are these four. And in the animations, I found out that I need this model and this model. And in the model, I found the textures references, which was only Django 5 BT or Ju 5 BT, which I imported. Then I imported all the animations, models, sounds, and the T11 itself, and made sure that they are in the NSD. Then I made sure that my T11 is in the T11 list in the NSD, and I put it on the last slot, which is index 63. Then I made sure that my my stuff is loaded, that I'm not loading too many textures. So I've got the enemy data and the texture loaded, and then I just went ahead and placed an actual object that uses this. And for the object, the type is equal to the index of the T11 in the T11 table or list in DNSD, and the and the subtype and the settings are equal to subtype and settings of your object from the level that you exported it from. And I also made sure that the object is actually drawn. And that's about it. Thanks for watching if you made it this far, and see ya, I guess.